Why are those who have renounced money living in trillion value structures? That question is like a razor-sharp blade slashing across the spiritual sky, which is already shrouded in layers of hazy incense smoke. Looking back at the flow of time, from the dawn of humanity to the digital era, human life has always struggled within the vortex of the material and the spiritual, unable to escape the mockery of providence. Amidst the dusty, turbulent world of mortals, the image of gold-plated pagodas standing tall and piercing the blue sky, starkly contrasting with the non-seeking philosophy of the enlightened ones of old, has created a paradox both tragic and magnificent. If the world-honored one who abandoned his throne and jade palace to don the robes made of discarded rags suddenly returned to this century and witnessed such a sight, would his eyes be tinged with sadness? Or would he merely in silence see through the transience of the world's ways? Perhaps, when the rugged ebony bowl of the past is replaced by cold, square QR codes, the sacred bond between the path and life has also silently severed. Tracing back history more than 2,000 years ago, the image of the Sangha, barefoot and bareheaded, clutching alms bowls to beg for food, was the most majestic symbol of renunciation. Mendicancy, in its deepest original meaning, was absolutely not the act of a beggar pleading for charity to survive day by day. It was an exquisite method of practice, a ruthless mechanism to annihilate the ego. When a monk bowed his head to receive offerings from sentient beings, that was the moment his arrogant self was shattered, making way for infinite humility. Conversely, when a layperson offered a few leftovers or a piece of dry bread, they were practicing the letting go of greed and stinginess to plant the seeds of kindness. That wooden bowl contained not only food to nourish the body, but also an entire sky of morality. It was the vital bridge maintaining the life-sustaining interaction between the practitioner and the social community. The Sangha needed sentient beings to nourish the body, and sentient beings needed the Sangha to nourish the mind. That relationship was dialectical, tight, and as pure as the water of an autumn lake. However, the cruel wheel of time has crushed those primordial values, replacing them with the rise of convenience and pragmatism. Today, stepping into the gates of Zen, one no longer sees many shadows of barefoot monks begging for food. Instead, there are red, lacquered and gold-trimmed merit boxes, publicly listed bank accounts, and QR codes sitting prominently at the feet of Buddha statues. The act of making offerings has been distorted into a straightforward transaction, a quid pro quo where silver is spent and merit is received. The convenience of technology has inadvertently stripped away the soul of the offering. People no longer have to cook a bowl of rice with their own hands, no longer have to respectfully kneel and offer it with all their sincerity. They only need a touch on a phone screen, a ping sound signaling a successful transaction, and thus they believe they have fulfilled their duty to the divine. From here, a naked reality emerges. Modern pagodas are operating no differently than giant social enterprises. Their finance has replaced direct faith, and the numbers in income and expenditure reports are sometimes more important than the hours of meditation. It cannot be denied that to maintain great architectural complexes and to nourish hundreds or thousands of monks and nuns, abundant material resources are required. But the boundary between the means and the end, between need and desire, is inherently as fragile as a strand of spider silk. When a pagoda becomes a spiritual tourist destination, when faith is packaged into service bundles for peace praying and misfortune clearing, the sacred nature of religion is diluted by the calculations of the marketplace. Sentient beings come to the pagoda no longer to seek peace in their souls or answers to the problem of suffering, but to pray for wealth, luck, and fame, turning a place of purity into a place to bribe the deities. Delving into the corners of behavioral psychology and neuroscience, we see the sophistication in the traps of the brain. Modern science has pointed out that when humans perform acts of charity or transfer merit money, the brain releases dopamine, the chemical dubbed the happiness hormone, creating a sense of euphoria and instant satisfaction. Westerners call it a biochemical reaction. Practitioners call it the delusion of the inner demon. But the essence remains a sweet deception of consciousness. This feeling of false peace of mind is extremely dangerous because it leads sentient beings to mistakenly believe that spending money has resolved their karma. They think that money stained with sweat, even stained with blood and tears out there, only needs to pass through the temple gates to be purified. They believe that sins will be erased and merits will be accumulated. This is the mechanism of buying and selling peace. The brain, in its cunning wisdom, has established a shortcut. Instead of having to practice arduously to change one's character or to repent sincerely, which are tasks requiring great spiritual effort, now one only needs to transfer a sum of money and dopamine will do the rest of the work by soothing the gnawing conscience. The joy of seeing one's name carved on a stone stele or announced during a festival is, in reality, just food to nourish an ever-growing ego, diametrically opposed to the non-self spirit of Buddhism. The ways of the world change, human hearts are fickle, and materiality has ascended to the throne of values. We see pagodas built with trillions of dong, with lim wood pillars, lapis lazuli roof tiles, and Buddha statues cast from tons of solid gold. That grandeur, in terms of form, is a tribute to the Dharma and a source of pride for believers. But in terms of essence, it is a tomb burying enlightenment. Material wealth can build magnificent monasteries, but it absolutely cannot build the character of a true practitioner. Gold and silver can cast a Buddha statue, but they cannot cast a Buddha heart. In the old days, under the Bodhi tree, there was no roof, no high walls or deep moats. There was only a great human being facing the stars and finding the truth of liberation. Today, in skyscraper towers equipped with cool air conditioning, how many people are truly practicing, or are they just practicing monkhood as a profession? Material abundance is often inversely proportional to spiritual sublimation. When a monk no longer has to worry about food and clothing, no longer has to go on alms rounds to experience the cold indifference of the world, they easily fall into a state of enjoying merit, forgetting the original ideal of seeking the Buddha path above and transforming sentient beings below. Leisure is the sweetest poison that kills the will to practice. If the Buddha knew that pagodas today need money and no longer go on alms rounds, perhaps he would not judge, nor would he be angry. For with the wisdom eye of an authentically enlightened one, he thoroughly understood the law of formation, duration, destruction, and emptiness of all things. His Dharma is also not outside that law. In the age of Dharma decline, the outer form remains, while the spirit has faded. This is also a natural consequence of the universe's movement. However, within that clear-sighted gaze, there surely remains a deep sense of compassion. This compassion is not because the pagoda becomes poorer or richer, but because sentient beings are increasingly lost in the labyrinth of their own making. Money is inherently neutral. It is a good tool if guided by wisdom, and a tyrannical master if controlled by the ignorance of greed. The problem lies not in whether the pagoda has money, but in the mindset of the person holding the money and the person giving the money. When making offerings becomes a profitable spiritual investment, when the pagoda operates like an economic corporation, the bond between the monastic and the laity is no longer about teaching and protection, but becomes a relationship between a service provider and a customer. Solemnity collapses, making way for bartering. This is a collapse from within, more dangerous than any destruction from without. The history of both Eastern and Western religions has proven that when a church reaches the pinnacle of power and wealth, it is also when the seeds of decay begin to sprout. The gold-plated cathedrals of medieval Europe, the majestic great monasteries of the Tang dynasty, ultimately, they only remain as soulless relics if they lack the fire of true faith. Material prosperity often signals moral decline. That is the harsh law of compensation of providence that humanity seems to always intentionally forget. Amidst the flow of life rushing like a waterfall, modern humans struggle in a sea of suffering from pressure, anxiety, and loneliness. They seek out the pagoda as if seeking a lifebuoy, and they are ready to pay any price to buy peace. But alas, is peace a commodity to be bought and sold? Peace is the result of a process of practice, of internal transformation, and of the ability to see through the transient nature of all phenomena, and then smile serenely before every upheaval. The replacement of the alms bowl with a bank account has cut off the opportunity for the monk to practice the virtue of humility and cut off the opportunity for sentient beings to practice the perfection of giving without attachment. When there is no longer direct contact, the monk's compassionate gaze cannot touch the agitated soul of the layperson, and the layperson cannot feel the purity radiating from the practitioner's demeanor. All that remains are mindless numbers dancing on electronic screens, cold and dry. Looking deep into its nature, this shift reflects the crisis of an entire era. An era where humans worship materialism to an extreme, believing that money can solve all problems, including spiritual ones. An era where speed is prioritized over depth and convenience is valued over meaning. We are building larger pagodas, but human hearts are becoming narrower. We have more means of connection, but the connection between human and human, between human and the path, is becoming increasingly loose. Though knowing that all things are impermanent and the rise and fall of worldly affairs is only natural, standing before the adversity of the era, the awakened heart cannot help but harbor a sense of concern. If the Buddha were reborn, perhaps he would not step into those magnificent pagodas, but would instead return to a quiet tree or immerse himself in the flow of the suffering people out there where pain truly exists. Because the path does not lie in gold statues, nor in trillion-value bank accounts. The path lies in the consciousness of each sentient being, where the battle between good and evil, between wakefulness and ignorance, is still taking place every second. In the end, temples or money are merely the finger pointing at the moon. People are so preoccupied with admiring the finger adorned with jade and precious jewels that they forget the bright moon high above. The wealth of Buddhism today, paradoxically, is the greatest challenge to the survival of the true Dharma. Overcoming the temptation of money, keeping a pure heart in the mire of fame and fortune. That is truly the miracle, the greatest supernatural power in this era. And if it cannot be overcome, then all those trillion value structures, those convenient QR codes, will ultimately be nothing more than piles of rubble and digital waste in the eyes of time. When the storm of impermanence sweeps through, what remains is not the splendid gold and vermilion, but the terrifying emptiness of souls that have never been cleansed. The velvet curtain falls, and the earthly drama continues with all its joy, anger, love, and sorrow. Buddha still sits there, smiling, a mysterious smile for all eternity with no answer. Is it a smile of tolerance for the foolishness of sentient beings, or a smile of farewell to an era where the path has been submerged by the world? The answer lies not on the lips of a wooden statue, but right within the awakening or the eternal slumber of our very own selves.